So, what's really going on with our economy and what has changed? First, I'm not a financial advisor, which is probably good because that means I don't have anything to sell you. I think we need to take a trip down memory lane. After World War II, the United States emerged as the only remaining superpower. We had the only surviving military of any significance, and over the previous years, we had created a massive industrial engine that could now be converted to civilian use. This led to a level of prosperity and growth that the world just really had never seen. This prosperity continued for decades, and by all accounts, society was becoming richer. We had a lot of that work ethic that carried over from the Great Depression, and that got us through the war. The technology improvements combined with the young workforce of the baby boomers, that created an economic system that just propelled the United States forward. This increased labor had an effect of pushing labor costs down, but the demands of these young consumers was very high. And, that caused a lot of inflation and it kept things moving forward. And even with inflation, wages were going up, so it wasn't really that huge problem. My name is Jazz. For those who don't know me, I cover politics, economics, and most importantly, homesteading.
In uncertain times, I think it's always a good idea to have multiple sources of income. Over the last several years, I've supplemented my cash flow by selling parts for industrial equipment. I have an old Onan generator here that I picked up off Facebook classifieds. Apparently it fell out of an RV, and I found out later that it also fell out of the tow truck that picked it up. The guy had it listed for $40, so I figured I'd take a gamble. I gave him another $20 to deliver it, so hopefully my $60 investment will pay off. It's in pretty rough shape, but hopefully it's got some good parts on it. I have to get this thing torn down, cleaned up, and listed on eBay. We'll continue my economics discussion, but you can join me during this teardown. If you're enjoying our time together, a like and a subscribe would help me out a lot. So let's get back to our discussion. Something happened in 1971 when Richard Nixon took the United States off the gold standard. This unfortunately was going to happen eventually because the United States continued to print money while the gold supply did not increase. Some of this increase in the money supply was unfortunately necessary with the economy increasing and the United States having the world reserve currency. This system was inevitably going to fail, but deficit spending by politicians helped it along. As government spending increased and the national debt surged, this reduced the value of the US dollar. To make ends meet, this often required two-income households. By the early 80s, real output from the United States industrial capacity was starting to fall. We were making fewer products as a society and became a more service-based economy. U.S. industry offset this problem by taking advantage of developing countries, mostly in Asia. The United States economy continued to become fundamentally weaker and less capable of providing its own needs over the next few decades. However, because the United States dollar is a reserve currency and we were able to spend more than we earned, this allowed for us to get by importing very inexpensive manufactured goods to keep the cost of living manageable. Many of the baby boomers are invested in these companies either directly or indirectly through retirement programs and have had healthy gains resulting from the low-cost foreign labor. Many people thought through their prudent investment they were making their net worth increase. However, from the early 80s until around 2020, the market knew nothing but decreasing interest rates. Not only did this make it continually easier to borrow money for growth, but it also made it continually easier to roll over debt instead of paying it off. This artificial growth had brought 40 years of artificial prosperity. Never mistake a bull market for a prudent investment. Today, we've reached a new level of financial insanity. The way the stock market used to work was that the value of a company's stock was closely related to the economic output of that company. If Company A had a net profit of twice that of Company B, you could reasonably estimate that the value of the stock for Company B would be about twice of that of Company A. However, Wall Street has become a casino. Fundamentals are almost completely irrelevant, and it's now just gambling on whatever company's investor thinks is going to have the most hype. This has been very good for the top 10% of people who have been in the game. However, much of this apparent prosperity has come from the other 90% doing with less. So much of the valuable economic output from technology and manufacturing are no longer in this country. Many of the high-paying tech jobs have been replaced by low-skill and low-paying service sector employment. Economists love to paint a pretty picture with skewed economic data, such as showing job growth, but not pointing out how much of this growth comes from people losing the good paying jobs and having to replace it with two low paying jobs just to get by. The amount of money that must be invested into the economy to create an amount of GDP growth has increased multiple times to the point that we must continually shovel money into the economy just to stay afloat. If we were to remove increases in government spending from the economic numbers, by most metrics we would have negative growth. With that much of the government money and private sector money coming from borrowing, we're now lending ourselves into an illusion of economic prosperity. We're at a point now that most corporations can't prosper, or in many cases even survive without a continual injection of essentially interest-free money. Our stock market is now dependent upon a few tech companies to keep everything afloat. Ultimately, these companies do not provide anything vital to our survival. The stock market is only one of the metrics where our economy looks strong. In other words, it's all fake. The boomer generation, who has already gone into or will soon be retiring, is getting hit especially hard. The younger generations did not get to ride the one-way prosperity train to riches in the same way. They instead inherited an outsourced economy that had already been stripped of profits. Most boomers have not had to scrap to get by in the same way that the younger generations have. Because of this, a downfall in the economy is hitting them especially hard. I think we all know that the government is going to need to write checks that they can't cash to cover Social Security and Medicaid going forward. These programs have always been a Ponzi scheme. They worked fine when we had a few retirees and a large workforce. Going forward, this is not going to be the case. The government may continue to send checks, but it's debatable what they will buy. A small glimmer of light comes from the fact that the United States is in better shape both demographically and resource-wise than most other countries on the planet. However, this does not mean that things are going to be easy for us, only that we can make a comeback. Things are going to be hard for a while, and even though the government will not admit to the economic recession, I think we can all see from our bank accounts that the money is now buying less. Because of complete demographic implosion in other countries, especially in China after decades of the one-child policy, and the highly educated youth are just not wanting to work in factories, we're going to have to learn how to do things for ourselves again. With much of the knowledge base retired, or soon to be so, solving this problem is going to require undoing 40 years of economic mismanagement. I expect there to be some pretty rough patches in the best of scenarios. However, if we can do things smart and utilize technology to help people, as opposed to just chasing profits, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. I expect many people who are very wealthy on paper to lose a lot at the time of reckoning. Luckily, there are always opportunities in a time of crisis. I do not expect the following years to look anything like the past 40. AI will replace many of the white-collar jobs, and we do not have the skill sets to take advantage of the new opportunities that AI will bring. Also, we have a severe shortage of well-trained blue-collar workers. If we can prevent total collapse, there will be a lot of great prospects for those willing to seize the opportunities when the need arises. At the end of the day, we're not going to get out of this problem with the same thinking that got us into it.